Hello, investor. Welcome to the fourth episode of Dara podcast. I'm your host, Dara. For this episode of podcast, we will study something particularly important to the economics of Cambodia, right? Specifically into banking sector. Okay, this will be a spicy topic for everyone, and I believe you may find it interested as well. Okay, now why do I decide to make this video? I decided to make this video is because looking back into the financial crisis that happened in 2008, it sparked to me that there need to be many regulation along the way inside the banking sector, right? So, maybe I will go through some of the financial crisis recap for some of you that don't know what happened or might not know the current situation of banking sector in Cambodia. And I will also try to connect them together as well, okay? Now, firstly, let's look into the financial crisis into 2008, in the US. So what happened back then? Back then, I would say the US was doing great after, I would say, the collapse of IT bubble. I mean, they tried to recover it, but they're doing okay, I believe. And around 2000, the year 2000, it was in a recession. And so what the government is trying to do back then was decreasing the interest rate around 5 to 1% and so. And what this does is it helped the consumer, the US citizen, to actually borrow the money, right? And I will go through what we call subprime loan, right? And the financial crisis happened because of this, because of the loan itself. So when people around 2000, they actually borrow more loan, they start to, pick up the loan from the bank, right? Because at the time it's recession, so they need to lower the interest rate. But the thing is that it was really bad to the point that the interest rate is low and the government need to keep the economy moving, so on and so forth, to the point that they don't really look into the person or the debtor that have bad credit history, right? Example, this means that if you are a person that don't really pay the bank the loan in 20 years or 5 years, right? Meaning that they mark you as someone that don't pay them back, right? It's insolvency. So they even take the loan and lending that loan to them, right? And so you can imagine if you loan a money or anything to someone that don't pay you back, what happened is that you end up losing that money sooner or later, right? And this happened for subprime loan. So let me define what is subprime loan. Subprime loan, you can imagine as a loan that is credited as a high risk, right? Meaning that people don't really pay back that loan. If you watch The Wolf of Wall Street, you may know it well. It can be counted as a really, really bad loan, okay? And you can see in the history that from 20 the year 2000 to 2006, 2005, the interest rate, the rate of the subprime loan increased dramatically, right? From around 2-3% to 15% in that, short period of time. And it was really great, right? People actually can borrow their money. And the great thing about that is that they don't have to pay back the bank, right? You may think that, okay, they borrowed the loan, they should pay back the bank, but no. This is what happened inside their mind. So when they borrow all that money, you can see that in the real estate sector, this subprime loan, it means that all of the US citizens, most of them borrowed the loan, to buy properties or to rent out their properties, right? Their home, all of that stuff. They use the loan money to buy them. And then for the collateral, right, they put using the home that they bought using the loan money. And you can imagine that this is like a loophole. The more loan they took from the bank, they can offset it with their home price. So you can imagine this. When the subprime loan go up, the demand of buying home will go up too, right? Because people keep borrowing the loan, they keep buying the house, and so the demand of buyer in the housing sector increase compared to the supplying number of homes, right? And what this does is that the house price will increase dramatically, leading to a bubble that happened around 1990s, okay? And you can say that, okay, it's looking great, so what's the point, Dara? Like, why are you telling us this? Well, it's because that if the price is going high and they can offset it using, the price of the house for the loan, the problem is that most people, if the market were to collapse, the market price of the home will go down, meaning that they don't have money to pay off their debt, to pay off their subprime loan debt, right? And I want to point out into another thing, okay? Number two is that into the asset-backed security, the mortgage-backed security, right? MBS. What this is, it is a security, an asset, where it is protected by, I would say, the house, right? And so when the housing sector go down, they don't have the money to pay off their loan, okay? Their security, so it's bad. And you might think that if everything go, so well around 2007, 2006, the price is going up, why all of a sudden it collapsed, right? This is due to, I would say, many factors, but I would point out a few. Number one, I would say, is because of the sector itself. There is a point where people will need to pay off their debt, right? And this can happen in, I would say, the same time for everyone when they need to pay their debt, but they don't have the money to do that, right? Because they need to sell their house and they need to pay up their loan. So if they were to sell their house, because of the market price go up, the thing is that, okay, fine, I can sell my house, I can pay back the subprime loan, all of that stuff. But the thing is, I don't have a home now. I don't have money. Right? That is the first problem for individual. It don't really count up as a big problem yet. Okay, so that's the first factor, is that everything happened, so fast. Not so fast, but everything happened at one time for everyone, right? And this would accumulate. Number two is that when the market start to decline because of the housing sector is start to decline, people start selling their house, you may think that people can just borrow more money, right, to get more loans in order to pay the subprime loan, but they cannot do that, right? Or another thing you can look at it is that the lender, no, not the lender, the house owner, they want to pay back the subprime loan, right, because it's due, but they cannot find a buyer for the subprime, for the mortgage, right, for the house, because everyone don't have the money, right? Remember, they have all their home, which counts as collateral, if they don't have the money to pay, right? And the thing is that why don't people, you may ask that, okay, why don't you just work for a job to get money and don't rely on the housing market for the market price of the house go up? Why you rely on that, right? I would say the answer is because no one would see it's coming. So this would be the perception that I want to point out in Cambodian market too. But I will go through that later. Now I want to focus on the US first. For the US citizen, they don't see it coming. No one sees it coming. I would say a few people that did see it coming, but most of them don't, right? And that is the problem. Okay, when everything is due, you may think that, well, I can pay back my loan by selling my house, and then I hope that people can actually give me money for selling that house. But they don't have, no one have the money to do that, right? No one have the money to buy a house because the market is collapsing, right? And so the problem, it reaches to the point that the bank, right, that they give the creditor, they give the loan to all the homeowners by setting up the mortgage, they cannot get their money back because no one paid for the subprime loan, right? All of that, the security too, right? Asset-backed security. In the movie, you see that in the movie of Wall Street, I want to link this up. In the middle of the movie, you can see that everything was going great, right? Everyone is happy. This is because everyone have the money to borrow against their housing market, right? Their subprime loan. Because of the market prices just keep rising, right? And they believe that, okay, I have this money, to pay off the subprime loan. But what if it's collapsed? They don't see that, right? And so during that time, they just borrow more and more money, thinking that they can have the money by selling from their home. But no, the problem kept getting worse. And so Bear Stearns was the bank that liquidated and bought by JP Morgan, right? And everything, I mean, around a lot of banks were actually dissolving, right? And giving the economy some worry. Okay, so it's really bad. Now, let's switch it up and turn to Cambodia markets. For Cambodian market, it is different story, right? I believe that it is a much different pace than US. Why? It's because you can see the size of the economy, the size of the home, the real estate, the investor sentiment. Many things are different, right, from the US, and we cannot comparably look at the difference in some sense, right? Now, for the real estate market in Cambodia, it's been rising, right? In the past few years, you can see that the price of the house decreased, but I wouldn't say that it's to the point like in the financial crisis in 2008. Another thing I want to point out is that you remember I said about subprime loan and all of that security. Cambodia have those security, but it's just not fully developed, and not many people know about it. Right? Not many people understand the concept of the mortgage, the security enough to actually borrow them, right? So it's good, it's fine, it's alright, because the subprime loan in the US, and during that time it's because of recession as well, right? And then they just give the money. In Cambodia, we don't have a big recession yet. Okay, I'm saying this, not yet. I would say that as long as Cambodia can manage to keep one of its sector alive and know what they're doing in the future and for their citizen, everything would be fine. That's okay. And for the banking sector, a lot of banks in Cambodia, they specialize in commercial, not really investment bank. I would say it's not fully developed, and everyone is trying to learn about investment more, about how they can impact the country, and also many securities as well. But yeah, they are developing. Because we don't have a recession, so that's okay. That's number one. Number two is because people in Cambodia don't have the knowledge enough. I'm not saying that they're not smart, okay? Cambodians are smart, but I believe that US is more superior into security, into asset, all of that stuff. And so when there's recession, example, if Cambodia were to have recession, you would, compared to the US, you might think that everyone can just borrow money to offset with the risk of paying them back, right? So they can borrow more money and then buy more land and then buy more real estate, building, all of that stuff. But Cambodia, I don't think that is what they mostly specialize on. I believe that real estate is booming. Real estate is a core strategy of economic expansion in Cambodia, but I don't believe that if there is a recession, you would borrow the debt and you try to buy more land, you try to buy more building to offset with that debt. Fully, I don't think they would do that. I don't think Cambodia would do that, right? Cambodia, if they were to have a recession, the government would try to make them borrow the money, but they're gonna look to, right? They're gonna look inside, who to give out the money to, the creditor, the debtor, of course. Our Cambodians also understand the financial crisis, and I believe they learned about it, to not trusting creditors, to no, the debtor to actually give them loan and believe that they can actually pay back the loan, right? I believe Cambodian know that, right? Another point that I want to mention is that NBC, National, the National Bank of Cambodia, they have strong connection with the commercial bank, with local bank in Cambodia, so that's okay. There is a strong regulatory review within them as well. There is, if you look into auditing inside all these local bank in Cambodia, I would say that they did a good job. It's not really 100% perfect, but at some point you can rely on them. I believe that's the point. They don't really give a big false review into the financial statement, into the balance, all that, right? So I believe that's okay. Yeah. Another point to review is, what does the Cambodia banking sector will look into the future, right? I did mention about this in my first video, Cambodia investment or investment in Cambodia, that we still lack the resource of investment, right? The knowledge inside what we can do with securities, what we can do with the assets. So Cambodia, they can learn about that, but they should take a cautionary actions, I would say that, to look where they want to spend their money and how they would develop their securities. If you look at the fixed income security such as bonds, such as debt, Cambodia right now is working on that, and I hope that many banks actually connect with the NBC, with the CSX, the Cambodia Security Exchange, to actually propose and building the bond market, the capital market, debt securities, to strengthen those stuff, right? At least we need to have it's either big or small capital market inside each bank, right? So they can issue, I would say, the capital loan, capital bond, secure bond from each bank to the citizen, right? That, I would say, is the first point to letting Cambodian experience it and find new way to finance their home, to finance their securities, right? To finance their jobs as well. So yeah, I would say in conclusion, we learned that from the US, there's a recession, government decreased the interest rate, people start to borrow more, but to a certain point, the government, the bank, they lend to people that can't pay them back. And so when everything is at high stake and the payment is due, they don't have the money, they sell their home. In the first phase, it's okay because they have the home, they have the buyer to buy their home. If they were to sell it, they get the money. But to a certain point, they don't have the buyer, so they just stuck with their house. They can't even sell their house anymore, and so everything just collapsed, right? The bank don't have the money, everything freeze, the accounts freeze, so it's bad, right? And so the outcome learned from that is that the bank should have financial reserve and to not to put more regulatory review over the debtor. For Cambodia, because there's no big recession yet, and because bank, they understand the interest rate, the flow of it, and they connect with NBC, it would be okay. It would be fine. If there is such a recession, they would look into who to give the debt to, who to give the loan to, right? I believe that's what happened. And if you look into mortgage-backed securities, Cambodia does have that, but it's not really advanced to the US. So if Cambodia were, so that's okay. If Cambodia were to have those security, they need to take precautionary actions into whether this will impact the economics of Cambodia, the financial interests of citizen, and whether citizen would understand what is the securities about, right? So yeah, I would say Cambodia would try to develop the capital market, the debt market in Cambodia, so that people can learn about that more. And in the meantime, try to put a regulatory review on those securities as time go by, right? That's all for the fourth episode of our podcast, right? And I will see you in the next episode of the podcast. Thank you.